As you know, I have a thesis about the exponential age that we're about to go through the fastest pace of technology the world has ever seen. That's what this whole series is about. This next interview with an old friend of mine is probably one of the most important single interviews you will watch. I can't stress enough how important the concepts and what is happening and the speed of which artificial intelligence is going to change humanity. It is something that we all need to pay attention to, understand, and use in our favor because it's happening, and it's happening at a scale of which you cannot. The frontier guy, and we're going to talk about a new frontier today. And then also in the pandemic, you helped guide us through some of that too. Give people a bit about your background, because it's a fascinating background and it's an interesting journey to where you are today. It's clearly now become your thing, right? This is your focus.
Yeah.
So before we get into what you're doing now, what the hell gave a hedge fund manager the thought process that, hey, I can help the WHO and everybody else with artificial intelligence?
Well, it's because to be a hedge fund manager, you have to be a bit of an egomaniac, right? You have to believe that you're right and everyone else is kind of wrong. Look, I mean, all of what we do is information classification, and that's the nature of artificial intelligence. So information comes in, and then Claude Shannon's style information theory, information is only valuable as much as it changes its state. So you're always looking for something on that graph or that news thing that will cause you to change from a buy to a sell or an increase or decrease in your positioning, right? I kind of realized over the years, so like my background was mathematics, computer science originally, and so quite quantitative, quite analytical, that the next wave of AI was something a bit different that would enable us to do something a bit different. Because we moved from this big data age, where you had massive amounts of information and they extrapolated it and targeted it to kind of sell Raoul some suntan or whatever, It's the most important parts of an image to do principle-based analysis, which is insane if you think about it. But it's exactly what we do, right? We have these heuristics.
What do you mean by principle-based analysis? Sorry.
So rather than doing extrapolation, so rather than doing momentum beta, AI became able to do alpha. It became able to basically come up with principles that allowed it to understand the hidden layers of meaning with things. So I can go that into a bit more detail. But this is how the human brain works, right? We have two parts of our brain. The future is like the past, and that's a tiger over there in that bush, right? It's the type 1, type 2 kind of thinking. So AI was always one of the extrapolation. And now we have a new type of AI that mimics the human brain by figuring out principles from highly structured data, which is kind of what we did every single day as the finance guys, right? But at a completely different scale. I don't think even now people have appreciated how big a change that's going to be to just about everything. I think we're starting to figure that out now.
So before we get into the guts of this, let's go on a bit of the journey of AI, because you've talked about where it was, and then we started to see stuff like DeepMind, and then GPT-3, OpenAI, all of this. So if you can just frame it for people, because a lot of this is going to be new for people, and I think it's incredibly important people understand what's happening, the speed at which it's happening, where the hell this is going.
That's how he got beaten by brute force. Now, the Chinese game of Go, Chinese checkers effectively, people thought you'd never be able to brute force it because there's too many things that you can do. There's too many moves on that board, right? And so they were like, that'll never be beaten by a computer because you need to build a computer that's the biggest computer ever times 1,000,000. What DeepMind did is that basically they came up with a self-supervised learning algorithm that learned how to dream. That's probably the best way to kind of put it, about how one would play Go in a principled way. So it didn't even have all the past games in its memory. It just played against itself and tried to figure out how to do this. They made a whole base of these agents with reinforcement learning that you gave it an Atari with no instructions that learned how to play Breakout and then StarCraft
Right.
and all sorts
Without
of other things.
any instructions. I mean, people need to understand that. It figured it out.
You put the computer in front of something, it just figures it out and then gets better and better. So when you see it playing Breakout, it's suddenly doing these crazy moves like that. And so Lee Sedol was like, I think, a 7th Dan in Go. So he was a Magnus Carlsen, which is, again, a bit crazy.
I mean, it's staggering. We'll come into the societal impacts and what this all means in a bit. But Just want to get through the technology. It is astonishing when you see GPT-3 because basically it writes authentic pieces that are not stolen from other things, much like the DeepMind did with Go. It wasn't stealing from old games. It learned how to do it. Is that right?
It learned principles. It learned styles. It learned what's called a latent space, the hidden layers of meanings between different types of words. So like we just released the most advanced image version of that, Stable Diffusion. Stable Diffusion took 100,000 gigabytes, so 100 terabytes of images, and we made a 2 gigabyte file that can do any style and any image of any type.
So this is like DALL-E, right?
It's DALL-E on steroids.
Hi, I'm Raoul Pal, the CEO and co-founder of Real Vision. The financial world is a complicated world right now. It's a really complicated macro picture, and there's a lot of risks. Real Vision and our YouTube channel help you navigate those risks. So subscribe now to the channel and never miss an update.
So you had something called Clip, which basically you took any image and it'd be able to classify it. So it'd be able to say, that's a Raoul and that's a red sofa and all these things. It understands loads of concepts because they compress that down. Then you had a generative model that took words to images. So you had two models, a word to image model and image to word model. And at the start of last year, we figured out how to bounce them off each other. So it would generate an image, and then it'd check if that image was the same as the prompt, and it'd go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And after 10 minutes, you generate a simulacrum of an image from the word input. So words go in, images come out. And we're like, holy crap. It looks a bit mushy, but that's insane. It can generate an image of anything, but it isn't high quality. Then what happened is that OpenAI and us accelerated that whole space because we thought it was freaking cool and put lots of research into it until you got to the point now whereby you can put in Robert De Niro as Gandalf and 1 second later, you get an image output. So the first output of that was, that hit the mainstream was DALL-E from OpenAI. Instead, it's learned the principles of that. So again, it's the principle-based analysis, which is insane, right? Because it's like, again, it's the heuristic stuff that we do all the time. And it can combine different concepts. So you can say a Van Gogh by Banksy, and it will do a Van Gogh by Banksy, or kind of do Scream. And now there's more and more technologies that have emerged from that. So OpenAI kind of announced the closed beta of that. And then my company, Stability AI, created a version that was 30 times faster and more powerful.
So tell me about Stability AI. When did it start? Who's involved? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, so it started in 2020. Well, technically started in 2019 with the education work, but I can talk about that later. But 2020 is when it was formed officially to do the COVID work. So it's lead the UN COVID initiative, launched at Stanford, etc.
So you founded this.
And we just got the remit to educate every child in Malawi, 3.9 million kids, with a completely open book of hardware, software, deployment, and curriculum. So we're going to invite the world to say, let's build an open source education system where the AI teaches the kids and the kids teach the AI. That's the type of stuff that we wanted to do because so much of the world's issues are coordination problems. So I figured out how to bring in the multilaterals, the locals, and others, like some cool mechanism design, and said, let's do education, let's do healthcare. But then as we were doing this, and we talked to a lot of the big private companies, they promised a lot and they didn't deliver. And this got me thinking about the future. So some of the people on this call will be familiar with the Chinese social credit score system and the use of AI in China to identify Uyghurs and others, and everyone's got a rating. You hang out with someone with too low a rating, your rating starts to go down. 8 million people in China can't use planes or trains.
It's behavioral economics, right? Done by AI.